Hello. We're about to get started. If y'all could take a seat. Does it need to be? Okay. All right, welcome to the Civic Buzz, the League of Women Voters Minneapolis Public Education Forum. My name is Lisa Mills, and I serve on the board of the Minneapolis League. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation at all levels of government, works to increase understanding of major policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. At the League, we recognize that diversity makes our organization and our democracy stronger. Inclusion of people with differing perspectives, opinions, and life experiences helps us to understand issues more fully and advocate more effectively. You may know about the League's voter services activities. We register voters at many public events, including new citizen swearing-in ceremonies, high schools and colleges, state and county fairs, and more. We host candidate forums for local races like school board and city council, and publish and distribute the voter guide with information on local candidates' stances on issues. The National League publishes the Vote 411 website, where Americans can find out how to register, where to vote, and what will be on their ballot. But the League of Women Voters is also about education. I serve as program director for the Minneapolis League, coordinating our efforts to engage and educate our members and the public about issues. Through our program, we work to increase understanding of major policy issues by studying topics chosen by our members. One of the ways we do this is through our public speaker and discussion forum, the Civic Buzz. Our goal for the Buzz is that everyone leaves the discussion with a broader understanding of an issue. Today's topic is public safety in Minneapolis. Since 2020, our Reimagining Public Safety Committee has been researching and learning from many different organizations, activists, and experts in public safety. They've also partnered with Plymouth Congregational Church's Reimagining Community Safety Committee, including for tonight's event. Tonight's event is being recorded, and the video will be posted unedited on the League and Plymouth websites in a couple days. You can also find recordings of our past events, including last year's conversation with Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara on the Civic Buzz website. And with that, I will turn it over to our committee's chair, Jane Lansing.
Thanks, Lisa. You know, it's been 4 years since George Floyd was murdered by police officers in Minneapolis. Since then, many changes have been made within the city and the police department, and there are years of changes ahead of us. Our guests tonight are integral parts of these changes, and they're going to discuss this work and the plans to continue improving public safety in our city. After we hear from each of our guests, we're going to have a Q&A, so please print clearly, like you're a computer, your questions on the note cards, and we're going to gather them up by our colleagues and then pose the questions after we hear from each of our guests. So let me just read a little bio of each of our guests. First of all, the Commissioner of Public Safety, the Commissioner of Community Safety is Todd Barnette. He attended the University of Minnesota Law School, where he earned his Juris Doctorate in 1992. After 14 years with the Hennepin County Public Defender's Office, Commissioner Barnette joined the Hennepin County Attorney's Office as a Senior Assistant County Attorney in the Juvenile Division. In 2006, Commissioner Barnette was appointed to the Hennepin County Judicial District Court. He was elected Chief Judge by his colleagues in May 2020 and re-elected to a second term in 2022. He was the first Minnesota State Chief Judge of color. In 2023, Judge Barnette was confirmed by the Minneapolis City Council as a Commissioner of Community Safety. Judge Barnette's job includes leading the city's Office of Community Safety by managing and coordinating 5 departments: 911, fire, emergency management, police, and neighborhood safety, and breaking down the barriers between them. Commissioner Barnette is also an adjunct faculty member and mentor at the University of St. Thomas Law School. Now, Luana Nelson Brown became Director of Neighborhood Safety, formerly the Office of Violence Prevention with the City of Minneapolis, in June 2023. Her goal is to use public health perspective and evidence-based alternatives to policing to address the root causes of violence. Director Nelson Brown is the former executive director and founder of the Iowa Coalition for Collective Change in Des Moines, Iowa. The coalition works with nonprofits throughout Iowa on a range of topics, including violence prevention and intervention, community outreach, and creating equitable, anti-racist policies, practices, and procedures. Nelson Brown was appointed by the Iowa Supreme Court to the Iowa Access to Justice Commission to serve a 3-year term from October 21 through September 2024. The commission serves Iowans by promoting and advancing innovative strategies for ensuring equal access to justice. So we're very, very fortunate to have these two leaders in public safety here with us, and we're going to start by hearing from the Commissioner Barnette.
I was going to put this near the computer, and then I was like, no way. Don't want that to happen. Well, good evening. It's good to be here. You will, matter of fact, I'll do it now. You will see me look at my watch, mainly because I'm a former judge, and I'll just keep on talking. So I put myself on a timer, so every so often you'll see me hit it. I thought, gosh, what should I tell you today? Because they left it pretty wide open. I thought it'd be good for me to really introduce myself as to some of my background. And I'll answer the 2 questions that most people ask me everywhere I go. Why did I take this job? That's usually 1 or 2 right away. And the second question is, so how are you dealing with the city council? I'll answer both of those for you. That's not going to be a problem. So it was a nice introduction, but I'll add to the introduction for me. I grew up in Washington, D.C. And so if you know about D.C., I grew up in Southeast D.C., working class neighborhood. My mom and dad were married for some time, probably divorced when I was probably about 8 or so. My mom, single mom. My dad went to prison when I was about 8 years old, and coincidentally, or not so coincidentally, he went to prison here in Minnesota, Sandstone, Minnesota. So he was in federal prison there. My mom died when I was 19. I bring that up because my grandmother was so significant in my life and so important for me as a young man who was very angry about the circumstances of my mom. And she died of lupus, and so that really was impactful, of course, for anyone. But she was just, both my mom and my grandmother were just 2 amazing women that had a real strong influence on my life. So you probably tell my age. I graduated from law school in '92. I'll save you the math. I'm 57. I only say that to say a little bit of what I witnessed growing up, right? 80s crack cocaine, right? So I am 84. I'm a freshman at George Washington University. And this is, crack is really starting to take a hold of folks in destroying families and individuals and communities. And so I just say that to say I grew up through that. And now we see it with fentanyl. And fentanyl is really taken, again, it's this drug that has come along and has just really taken a hold of communities. And we see a lot of the results of drug addiction that we see, homelessness, mental health issues, and all those other things that coincide with that. And so I just thought it would be important to kind of give you that background about who I am, and then kind of talk about what my responsibilities are as well. So I guess where I would start with is a little bit more about the career. Came here in '89, went to law school at the U of M, lived across the street in Seven Corners. The first time it snowed, it was about October, I think. I got here in August. Like I said, I've been here before, but don't really remember it as a child. I don't ever believe we were here in the winter. I would remember that. But my point is that first winter here, I think it snowed about 4 inches. If you're from the East Coast or West Coast, you know 1 inch of snow, everything it just shuts down. I looked out the window. People were just about like any other day here in Minnesota. I thought you guys were crazy. And now I'm one of you. So that's a little bit about me and being here and what have you. But being here, I had always planned to go back to DC. That was my plan. I was in the public defender's office, and I never intended to practice law. But when I got to the public defender's office and got to work there, I got to see people that looked like my own family members and got to work and feel like I was making a difference. Don't worry, I'm not checking the time. It's a timer for myself. So, and that, I got that bug and started being an attorney. And then I was there for about 14, 15 years, and I went to the county attorney's office. What I think is significant in the public defender's office is that when I became a supervisor, I was a supervisor of the drug team. So it was drug court. Then I went to the county attorney's office. I specifically went to juvenile court. And in juvenile court, I was responsible for the criminal sexual conduct team. And also a lot of my focus there was informally on who we were certifying. And so, and I had worked in juvenile court as a defense attorney as well. Then I came to the bench, was on the bench for 17 years, held several positions, all in criminal court, and was the chief. So that brings me to, why did I take this job? I'll give you the reactions of each one of the folks who live in my house. My daughter is a junior at University of Northern Iowa. My son just left to be a freshman at Gus Davis. So I told my wife, hey, this job is open. I want to take this job to be Commissioner of Community Safety. And her reaction was not one I expected. I thought she would say, why that job? She said, 2 weeks, Todd. 2 weeks we've been empty nesters. 2 weeks we've been empty nesters. And I was saying this earlier, don't feel sorry for her. Don't, because I did too at first. I was like, gosh, oh man. You know, home, probably home away from home a little bit more often. But now I come home, she's taking a bath, which she hadn't really done. I should say also the 2 kids. She always said she had 3. She included me as one of the kids. And so I say this because I would come home and she'd taken a bath, which she didn't do that often when the kids were there. And she's had a glass of wine. She's living her best life right now. If you've been married for a while and you come home and your spouse looks at you like, why are you home so early? You know what I'm talking about. So that's my wife's reaction. My daughter, very A-type personality, told her about the job. It wasn't until I got an interview with the mayor that she said, and I won't use profanity here in church, she said, oh crap, you're serious. My son, you'll know that these 2 kids are different. It wasn't until the swearing in to be the Commissioner of Public Safety community safety, that he turned to my daughter and said, "Oh, wow, this is a big deal." So those are the things, and so that's a little bit about them. Personally, why did I take this job? Why did I tell you about my background? I said that because since I've been here in '89, we've seen a lot of different committees form, a lot of different reports done, and a lot of different groups demand change. And there has been change, and I would say each time there's been a little bit of change. After the murder of George Floyd and the civil unrest, Minneapolis, the state of Minnesota, the United States, and the world really changed. And all of a sudden, when Minneapolis burning, people started to go, "Oh, crap, we should probably pay attention." Well, we got the attention of a lot of people. And so I think this is, for me in my life, the first time that as a whole we want to address these issues. And it's not just one group trying to do one thing. I think it's more of a collective than it had been before. And so that part of it was important to me. The other part was important to me is sitting down with the mayor. And I asked the mayor, do I have discretion to do the things that I feel like I want to do? And he said, I think he was kind of puzzled, like, what the hell do you want to do? But it was because you're asking me to address some societal issues, the root causes of issues. You're asking me not to look at the bright and shiny new thing and go with that. You're asking me to dig down and change a system. And so I need discretion. And not only in the 5 departments that I have, but I need discretion within all of the departments in the city. Like you hear from Director Nelson Brown talk about having that health perspective, right? I need to be able to look upon health and talk to them. For instance, you close an encampment. That's not, I know you guys see MPD, it's not MPD. Before that encampment closed, there are folks on the ground from Hennepin County, from the city, going in there, trying to get people to services. I need to be able to talk to those folks. I need to be able to understand what they're doing. I need to make sure that we're doing this as a whole, because we've been doing it sort of in silos. So I need to be able to talk to Public Works and make sure they're on board to put up fencing when we close something down. And that's not in my department. I'll give you this example. I'm at one of the encampments. I told them they were about to close. I said, how can I help you? They said, we need trash bags and we need a dumpster. I can't get that from fire. Not getting that from the police. I don't know any of my departments that have a dumpster. So I call up Margaret Anderson Kelleher. I said, Margaret, I will go to Target and get trash bags, but I don't know where I'm going to get a dumpster. She said, don't worry about it. I'll find one for you. So those are the type of things that I need to be able to do. I can't go to the mayor and say, please, can I have permission to talk to Margaret? Can I have permission to talk to Public Works? Can I have permission to talk to the health department? I need to be able to have that discretion to get these things done. Staying on sort of this job change for me and why I took this job. I was at the Hennepin County Chiefs Association meeting this morning talking, and I got asked, we're talking about this, and I said, to a couple of them, because there are a couple of officers there who were retiring and everybody was clapping. I said, some people like to go into retirement and just coast. I want to go on fire. This is a job where I'm going on fire. This job does not have a happy ending. And what I mean by that is, this job is about setting expectations about what a city can do. This job is about changing a system to address the needs of citizens. And we know that citizens in one part of Minneapolis have different needs than other citizens, so it needs to be equitable. This job also means that the loudest voices don't always get what they want. This is a collective. We're diverse. We are diverse. And I say that over and over again because we need to be able to bring services to people that are appropriate for what they need. And so we have great programs like BCR, Behavioral Crisis Team, that actually is under Director Nelson Brown. She has the contract where when you call 911, they respond to a mental health crisis. As long as it's not going to be life-threatening to them, like a weapon or something, that's integrated into our 911 system. These are the things that we need to do. We need to be able to have appropriate responses. You all know from the DOJ or from the settlement agreement, police aren't those experts. And so we need to make sure we have the right response. Sticking with why this job is important to me and why we need to do these things. As a judge, as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, we're always at the end of the road. We're at the end of the road. We're at the very end for folks. Whatever happened has already happened. And so we need to be able to be in this role, and you'll hear me talk about it at the beginning of the road. So we have 5 departments. And you have to think of them in this way, and this is the way I think. I don't think you have to, but I suggest that you do. These 5 departments, you have neighborhood safety, crime prevention. That's at the beginning of the road. You have the police. That's at the end of the road. We want people not to have a negative impact with police. That's it. Neighborhood safety is just as important as the police. We gotta have both. It's not one or the other, it's both of them. And so, Director Nelson Brown will talk to you pretty soon here, but one of the things that her and I have talked about, I don't know if it's in her presentation, but I'll tell you because I think it's important. Neighborhood safety was taken out of the health department. Became the Office of Violence Prevention. Now it's under Community Safety Department. When they moved these things, and I'm not pointing fingers, they never set up the infrastructure to do the things that neighborhood safety is being asked to do. So Director Nelson Brown is tasked with setting up an infrastructure that will make neighborhood safety sustainable for a long time, make it just as important as the other 5 departments under me. So you will see, I think, 22nd or 25th of April? 25th of April, she'll present to the City Council a whole new org chart. We're in our own team meetings where I have all the department heads, and I did this purposely, and the purpose was to show them where neighborhood safety was. I had everybody go around the room and tell me if you had a leadership team. Everybody said they had a leadership team except for one. That's not right. We got to build up neighborhood safety. So the other things that are happening, and I'm sure you guys will ask me questions about them, but I'll talk about them briefly. We'll have a settlement agreement. We'll have a consent decree. Accountability and transparency throughout MPD is not going to be a problem because we're going to have those rules. So people say, what are you going to do about accountability? What are you going to do about transparency? It's here, and the DOJ is going to ask us for more, so it's going to be there, and we're going to have to deliver what they're asking us to do. And part of that is compliance with both of those agreements, and that's going to be my job. So right now, the city attorney will do what she's done with the Department of Human Rights and work with them, and they have a settlement agreement. The DOJ is a little bit different. I always say they're very nice. Always say that because I don't want to get in trouble. Because they are nice. We keep pressing them. When will you have a consent decree? They nicely say, we'll get it to you. I don't know when. So you can ask that question. I have no idea. People say, well, what's going to be in it? I don't know. But I tell you, they do contact us. They do ask us questions about certain things, right? So they may ask, how are you working with behavioral crisis unit? How is that integrated to your system? We'll tell them, we'll give them data, right? We still don't know why they want it, but they're looking at it, right? And so those are the things people worry about. Is the consent decree, what's going to happen when that's different than the settlement agreement? It's very easy. It's already written into the settlement agreement. Within the settlement agreement, if the consent decree says something different, I'm out of time, so I'm going to wrap up. If the consent decree says something different, we can work that out with the Human Rights Department. If we don't get it there, then we go to court and we work it out there. So it's a process already in place. You don't have to worry about that. Those things will happen. Real quickly, I'll sum it up with this because I think it's super important. Communication out of the Office of Community Safety is important. And this is why it's important, because you're going to hear me ask for probably positions for communications. I'm not trying to create a PR firm. I know that was some criticism of my predecessor. That's not true. There are data requests that come into MPD constantly. MPD alone sucks up all the time of my communication people. I don't have enough time to get out the good stories that are happening within these 5 departments and within other departments that we work with. And so that's important for us. I describe it as when we were doing baby classes for the kids and they told us, you have to give, I don't know what it is, 7 positives with every negative. Well, damn it, MPD's got negative, 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 negative. We got to get positives out there. And there's some really good work going on. Thank you for being here, and also thanks for my time.
Good evening. So I know you all can empathize with me having to follow such an amazing presentation and speech. I also have the challenge of being technologically, it worked, I know, just one button. And someone made the mistake of giving me a laser pointer too, and so I'm gonna try not to be distracted by that, but I may start asking questions. So, my name's Luana Nelson-Brown, and I am the director of the Neighborhood Safety Department. As you heard from my boss, I've been in the position since July of last year. And I have learned in those few months that it is important to get who you are out there. Like Minneapolis, you all do not care about the technical things until you know who the person is. So, following in Commissioner's footsteps, I'll tell you a little bit more about me than you've heard from the bio, which was excellent. Whoever wrote that did it. Okay, thank you so much. I was listening to it myself like, oh, wow, yeah, I did do that. Okay, that is me. But I moved here from Des Moines, Iowa, and I'm not a native Iowan, but I have lived in Iowa for 20 years. While in Iowa, I really enhanced my career that had begun previously in both Chicago and Nashville, Tennessee. So I was born in Chicago, and at age 3, my mother looked at my father and said, we're not staying here, I'm not raising my children here, and we moved to Milwaukee. So Milwaukee is actually my hometown. So I've been skirting your state my entire life. At age 15, my grandmother, who lives in Mound Bayou, Mississippi. Now, Mound Bayou is a teeny tiny, rural, very rural town in Mississippi that is 100% Black. And that is the town that my mother was born and raised in. If you look up Mound Bayou, it has very rich history and very rich culture. It has always been 100% Black. It is still 100% Black today, and it had the struggles of every all-Black town that you've known. The witnesses for the Emmett Till trial were hidden in Mound Bayou, Mississippi, because it was the safest place for them to be. My grandmother was a midwife, and she delivered some of our best and brightest from our community right there in that small rural hospital, Taborian Hospital in Mound Bayou, Mississippi. So needless to say, my mother was a freedom fighter. And when she grew up, she became a nurse just like her mother, but she said she was not delivering babies. So she worked in the emergency room instead. And like many of our community, she made the migration to Chicago when she was grown. And that is where she met my father, who was a Black Panther. So activism has always been in my blood. I was spoon-fed it, and I can't separate myself from it. One of the questions that I get asked all the time is, what are you doing here? I wish I could say that question came to me nicely and friendly, like with the Minnesota Nice, but usually it doesn't, actually. It's usually like, why are you here? And the reason I'm here is because I've been doing activist work in public safety, in anti-violence, working in gender violence my entire life. At 6 years old, I led my first protest. I know. It was written and very polite, but I'm Catholic. And at 6, I couldn't understand why I couldn't be an altar boy and serve in church. And so I gathered all my other first grade female friends, and we all said, yeah, why can't we serve in church? Now, they would let us come to the lectern like this and read. We could be readers, but we could not serve. And we knew that the boys got all kinds of perks, like cookies and whatnot, when they went behind, you know, and we didn't like that. So we started a letter writing campaign, and we wrote to the Vatican, and we kept, I know, and we kept writing to the Vatican, and we wrote every single year from 1st to 8th grade. I'm happy to say that now girls are allowed to be altar servers in the Catholic Church. I can't take credit for that, but I did learn in my 30s that not only was our little group of school-age girls writing to the Vatican in 1976, but other girls across the world were also writing to the Vatican. And so when I learned that, I knew that it was just a part of me to build coalition and to make my voice heard, right? Because when we work together collectively, we can make change. And things that we see today didn't exist yesterday. This awesome PowerPoint and pointer at one point didn't exist. And so it is not impossible for us to reimagine public safety in a way where everybody thrives and everybody succeeds, and we're working together in coalition. And that is why I came to Minneapolis. All right, so now I get technical. I am going to just give you a little bit of information about the department itself. You heard my commissioner mention that we're a brand new department. We were formerly the Office of Violence Prevention, and then we were pulled out of public health to become the Department of Neighborhood Safety. And I will ask you all for some grace ahead of time. Some of the questions that I've gotten so far are, why don't we know who you are? Well, a large part of that reason is because I've been building a department. And my commissioner is right when he says, there's a lack of infrastructure. At the end of this, I'm going to repeat this same thing, but without the bodies and without the infrastructure and without the support to hold this work up, this work won't get off the ground. So if you call me and it takes me a little while to answer, it's because I'm building a department. So neighborhood safety is a part of the ecosystem of public safety. And the ecosystem is what we are imagining public safety to look like moving forward. Traditionally, we thought of public safety, we thought of law enforcement. That was pretty much it. 911 deploys law enforcement, we're done. But now, we are thinking about public safety a lot differently, and we're, as the commissioner mentioned, thinking of it as a road. So how do we prevent violent crime and crimes from happening, and then how do we restore victims back to being whole and healing when it's done? That entire spectrum is an ecosystem that all of us have to participate in. So in our department in neighborhood safety, we've got well over 200 contracts to contract with community-based organizations, larger organizations, all have an idea of how to create safety in their own neighborhoods, and they span the entire ecosystem. So we have services that are preventative, that address near-term social health and economic challenges before criminal behavior manifests, services that are responsive, that address incidents in real time, like behavioral crisis response, and services that are restorative, that bring people back to healing after trauma. That's the entire ecosystem, and this slide just gives you an example of just a few of the services that we do. Some of our services don't fit into neat categories, though. Right? We do have some that are strictly preventative, some that are strictly response and strictly restorative, but many of them actually overlap. One of the things that I'm happy to see and I really enjoy is the flexibility that comes with creating a new system. Right? So if we stuck to the box, this is the ecosystem, preventative, restorative, we would not get anywhere and the whole thing would fall apart. One of the things that I love about my commissioner is that because he has discretion, he allows us discretion and flexibility. So some of our programs overlap, and the one that I get the most questions about is the violence interrupters. That would be a program, an example of one of the programs that overlaps all three of parts of the ecosystem. The violence interrupters is born of the Cure Violence model that comes out of Chicago, and it is a scientific-based program. A lot of people don't know what they do. They almost do it all. Who they are credible messengers in their own community, and most of them have been exposed to or experienced violence in some way or another themselves. A lot of them are reformed. And what they do is they detect and interrupt potentially violent situations, and the way they do that is in many different ways. If you think about a community, especially when I was young, I grew up in the 70s. Well, I already told you I was 6 in 76, so you can do the math. Think about your community and when someone was acting up in your community. And your mother may not have seen it, but your auntie down the street did, or your mother's best friend around the corner did. And then what happened? She picked up the phone and did what? Called your mother. Exactly, exactly. Violence interrupters are well-respected, credible messengers in their community that know what's going on. They're the, what was the lady's name? Edith Kravitz? Yeah. Some of you remember Bewitched, right? Yeah, they're the Edith Kravitz of the neighborhood, right? And so when a buzz is happening and there's potentially a situation that's about to unfold, their job is to go and prevent and interrupt whatever is about to happen. And they do that just by being great community members. So that is how the system is set up. As they're having conversations with whoever they need to, they utilize what we call cognitive behavioral interventions, which is a fancy way of saying, change your thinking, change your behavior. So it's really a community on community, getting back to the way we think about community, and we like to think about community, in order to interrupt or prevent violent situations from happening. And as they're having those conversations, which could be in person, they could be over the phone, they could be virtual, what starts to happen is you start to get a change in norms in communities, and violence is reduced. So that is what the violence interrupters do. They are also very proud folks, and you'll see them in certain areas of town with their orange shirts on, and a lot of people wonder, well, what are they doing? What they're doing is they're being credible messengers. So that's how that situation works. And if you think about that, that model, it spans, because they could be preventing a situation. They could be out and see someone they know about to start something and interrupt that situation, or they could be called in after an incident has occurred and offer help and healing and support in that way as well. So not all of our initiatives fit in one little box. All of them, though, are data informed. Violence interrupters and several others are scientific based, but we also fund some services that actually have been customized. In the 9 months I've been here, I've had calls and talked to folks who have gotten together with their neighbors in their own communities, and they have customized interventions that they feel like will work in their area, and it actually is working pretty well. Even if it's customized or if it's scientific based, all of them are informed by data. So data tells us, is this a good idea in this area? Let's do it. It also tells us if an intervention is successful. So data is what I call one of the supports of the entire ecosystem. And when I say supports, I'm talking about infrastructure, like the supports holding up this building. Data is definitely a strong support that we are building as we create the ecosystem. And building an ecosystem starts with all of us. I can give you a few of my goals for the next year here in NSD as we're building that ecosystem. And the first one, my commissioner already mentioned, thank you. They're holding up time signs, which is great because I didn't set a timer. I wasn't that savvy. Building infrastructure is my #1 goal, because without the capacity to roll these initiatives out, without the infrastructure, there is no way that neighborhood safety is going to be able to support all of the work that is coming our way. Another goal is to build coalition, because another support that we need is the collaboration of all of you. I came here and quickly noticed that the initiatives in our own department operate very independently. And so over the next 12 months, we are going to be building coalition within our own department and also building coalition with all of you. Part of that building coalition is also amplifying the voice of victims, because in my 30 years of work, I've realized that the answers to your solutions, the best answers, come directly from the people who have experienced the issue in the first place. So we definitely want to amplify those voices and get to those solutions. And then we want to bring in partners and stakeholders just like you, because you never know when the next best idea comes from or who it comes from. So where do you all fit? Well, if we start to look at the building blocks of violence, this is where we can all see what part we play and where we fit. I know it's not super easy to see that, but I get to use my pointer. Down here at the bottom of this pyramid, this is the pyramid of violence. This particular one is the pyramid of hate that we use to talk about hate crimes, but it works for all violence. At the very bottom, you'll see biased attitudes. So what are your beliefs and your attitudes about other people? That's the foundation of violence. Going up from there, then we start to see acts of violence. This is bullying, harassment, talking about people behind their backs, starting rumors, right? It could be simple or complex. And then when you move up from there, you get to discrimination. So that could be housing discrimination, political discrimination, educational discrimination. And then we move up the ladder. Those bottom supports hold up the culture of violence. And if we knock out those bottom supports, then we start to see it crumble. And so my question is, where do you fit in that pyramid? Because every last one of us in some way participates in a culture that supports violence. What I'd like to see us do, and my goal, is to get us to move to a culture where we are no longer accepting of any kind of violence. And that means we all have to put in work. So politically, when there's little whispers about folks, or it's us against them, think about those actions and those behaviors and those attitudes and those beliefs actually supporting a culture of violence. We have to get to a place where we are inclusive of diverse thoughts, diverse people, diversity all the way around. And when we can do that, we will find that our community will be much more rich and much more safe, because we'll be able to trust and rely on one another. The third goal that I have is infusing cognitive behavioral interventions, and then I'm gonna get ready to close it up. And as I said before, that's a fancy way of saying change your thinking, change your behavior. What I just talked about with the attitudes and the beliefs, if we change those, we dismantle the pyramid of violence. That is a soft form of cognitive behavioral intervention. So when you start to go about your daily routine and you're knocking doors, or you're doing whatever you do in your daily life, and you decide one day not to make that snippy remark or not to spread that rumor, you might think that you're not contributing to the ecosystem, but you are. Because the more that we start to become in relationship and coalition with one another, have honest, true conversations with one another, we start to imagine the community that we want to live in. So my goal is to focus us in that direction, as opposed to focusing us in a direction of negativity. Well, let's take what do we do? Let's take this away, no, let's start to dream about what this really looks like, and then let's each one of us do the behaviors we need to do in our own places to knock down the supports that we've seen hold up violence before. That is my time. Thank you so much.
It's just, as I look forward, I think as we've met some of the leaders in our community safety organization, it really gives us a lot of hope for the future. So thank you so much. We've got some questions, and please, if you would like a card, just raise your hand, and the card pullers will bring them up to the table here, and we'll bring them. We've got a number of questions already. I think we're going to reflect what you had said about like, would you say, most of the questions are about the police, so we have a few already about the police. So sorry to go from all of your inspirational remarks to some of our practical questions here about the police. There's been a lot of things in the news lately about oversight, police oversight. How is your work impacted by the fact that citizen complaints about MPD officers are handled outside of the jurisdiction of your agency by the Civil Rights Department and the Office of Police Conduct? And also maybe you could just comment about some of the issues that we've had about kind of standing up an oversight process in the city. I think we're on like the 4th iteration, and it seems to be sort of challenging to set that up.
I'll try my best to answer that. But first, I did say I was going to answer the question about city council.
You did.
I totally forgot why I was talking. So people go, how are you dealing with the city council? Here's the way I look at it. They're elected officials. People elected them. I have to respect the position. You know, and so the best example I give you is that back in December, we tried to get police incentives, and it failed. It didn't have enough votes. And people kept asking me, what are you going to do? You know, how did that happen? The elected officials voted it down, period. We got to move on. I got to do things to get them to a point that it passes. So I get frustration and things like that, but we still have to work together to try to get to common ground into a good place, and complaining about it won't get it done. So that's how I deal with the city council. To police oversight, I think probably there's 2 ways in which a complaint comes into Minneapolis. One is, think of a police officer or a city employee making a complaint against a police officer, right? That's going to come through internal affairs. If a citizen makes a complaint, that complaint's going to come through civil rights. Both of those complaints at some point are going to be looked at, and someone's going to make a determination about whether they need to be investigated further. So they get investigated beyond that. We know if it's merit or not. At some point, there's a panel on the civil rights part. You can have a panel done, and that panel can make recommendations to the chief. On the IA side, internal affairs, they might have a recommendation to the chief. The reason you have these 2 paths is because under the settlement agreement, what was brought out in that settlement agreement is that before you had basically an NPD supervisor making decisions on either way, right? So they said, look, you can't do that. You got to have these separate. So you have these separate ways. So when you talk about oversight, yes, there's been several oversight committees. I think what you'll see if you paid attention to Margaret Anderson Keller, myself, the city attorney Anderson, all of us was before the council maybe about a month ago, and we talked quite a bit about the backlog and complaints and how we wanted to address that backlog, right? That's not necessarily oversight, but the real issue behind that for me is taking too long, right? How can I discipline a person if the process is taking long? How's a victim feeling like they've been heard if we're talking to them 2 years later? So I think that some of the issues about oversight are there, but for me right now, let's get the process right, and then let's talk about oversight. But in general, I said it earlier, the oversight is there through the settlement agreement, and it'll be there through the DOJ, where we will have to hit deadlines. So if there is something that they see wrong with our structure or process, it will have to change.
I think this is for Director Nelson Brown, but maybe to both of you. The City Council added an amendment to the 2024 budget that allocated $4 million to develop new alternatives to police response with an emphasis on input from the 3rd Precinct residents. And will your department be involved in that? Mm-hmm. And then I think as sort of an adjunct to that, sort of the role of the community safety in being part of the 3rd Precinct. So maybe you want to start with the $4 million and alternatives, and then what's going to be happening with the community safety in the 3rd Precinct.
Yeah. Yes, our department will be involved in that. We're the department that has the oversight of that $4 million. We're not in a position right now to tell you what we're going to do with that. But it will definitely, the initiatives that roll out will come through our department. And then, of course, we work directly with Office of Community Safety in planning and implementing and rolling that out. So yes, we will be involved.
Okay, do you want to talk about the 3rd Precinct? Sure.
If I could just follow up a little bit on Director Nelson Brown's comments. And I can't say it enough. I can't say it enough here. I can't say it enough at City Hall. Neighborhood safety has to have the structure in place, that infrastructure, to handle the contracts that they currently have before they take on new ones. So I'm just going to say it here. You're going to hear at some point that neighborhood safety got all of this money back in December to do all of these things, all these new things. And you're going to hear me say, they're not ready. I don't want to start something that we can't keep going. So if they have 200 contracts right now and they can only handle 150, they're going to do 150. And people are going to be mad. I can't have neighborhood safety not have the capacity to do what they are able to do. So I just make that clear because I'm sure that's going to be an issue. The South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. We are a week away from April 15th. So here's where we are. Found the building. We signed a purchase agreement. We're in that last part of the 90 days, which will end April 15th. Where we've done all of our inspections, environmental inspections, structure on the building. And then by June 1st, we hope to sign off and take possession of the building. The background a little bit, you guys know this, there's been a lot of community engagement around a lot of issues. Specifically to what is that South, or what's the 3rd Precinct going to look like, and then what in the world is this South Minneapolis Community Safety Center? Director Amanda Harrington, who's in charge of our Design and Implementation Committee, that's part of her responsibility. She's looked at all of the internal community engagement that's been done by the city around this issue. She's reached out and found external community engagement that's been done. Currently, she had a community engagement meeting last week that was done. And now we're trying to hit all of those voices that haven't been heard, right? So targeting the Native American community, hearing that voice, LGBTQ voice, disabilities, folks with disabilities, really being targeted at those areas or those folks who we normally don't hear from. If you go on the website, pretty soon there'll be, for the Office of Community Safety, there'll be a survey for people to do. as well. We've heard the loud voices. We hear them well. We want to hear from some other folks as well. And so we're very targeted in what we're trying to do. There will be a precinct in that building, no doubt, and they have certain requirements. So when you hear somebody say, oh, so the police and the community are going to have the same locker room, what police station can you go in as a citizen and go to their locker room? It's not going to happen. So these crazy ideas, we have to have a secure police station where there's a separate entrance where police come and bring suspects and evidence. There's requirements by the federal government, by the state on how certain things have to operate within that's going to be taken care of. This whole building is where we want to try to bring folks together where we know folks don't want to be, right? And this is a reality. We've done harm as police officers in the community. We need to bring the community together in some shared space in that building where police officers and citizens can interact. And that's going to be tough because we have citizens that don't want to interact with police. We have police that don't want to interact with citizens. But we're not going to get anywhere if we don't make this happen. The reason the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center is so important to me is because it's a model for the rest of the city. The services that go in on that side, you're going to hear it over and over again. If you saw me in front of the city council, you heard the council ask me over and over again, what are you going to put in there? I said, I don't know. We're going to let the community decide. The community has to decide what goes in that building. We have, I say we because that includes me, we have given community services or put services out in the community and not ask them what they want, so they go away. So it's so important that we ask community, what do you want there? Let's try to get it there. So you've probably heard me in front of council say, if you want a food shelf, I can put a food shelf up like that because that's just shelving. That doesn't mean that a food shelf is going in there. I was using that as an example. The community will decide what goes in there. That might be, they might want driver's license services in there. They might want mental health services. I have no idea where we end up at the end of the day, but we want to try to provide what the community wants there.
So a question on violence interrupters. Can you talk about are there metrics around the success of this program, and are there measures to track funding and effectiveness of these 200 different groups that you're contracting with?
Yeah. That's a really good question. So the Cure Violence model does have metrics to track the success of the program. Most of neighborhood safety departments' programs were put up very quickly. Violence interrupters is no exception. Now that we're in a place where we are building infrastructure and we are building the department, we're now moving into the place of working on data. So while I can't give you information today, this is one of the goals for 2024 for not just violence interrupters, but all of our programs, is to start putting those metrics in place so that we can evaluate their success. And then what was the second? There was a second part to that.
It was just, do you have just numbers, and do you have metrics to track funding and effectiveness, sort of group to group of the 200 groups that you have?
Right. That's the big question right there, and what I spend most of my time doing every day. We are definitely putting measures in place to track our funding and track our contracts. It's our job to know how every dollar and every penny is spent. We are that is actually one of my expertise. That's one of my areas of expertise. I've funded agencies, anti-violence agencies, for the last 20 years. So we are definitely in a position where we are building up our compliance. And as we build our infrastructure, you will start to see how we do that become published on our website so that everyone knows what that looks like. We are not there yet. We are able to track, but we're not at the point where we're able to put out there exactly what that looks like right now, because I just don't have enough staff right now. But definitely we do have metrics in place. When we award contracts, it goes through an RFP process. There is a review panel that reviews those applications, so it's not me sitting in a desk going, who am I going to give this money to? You know? And then we come to a collective decision with that review panel. We award the contract, and then it's my staff that then tracks and monitors those contracts, including every penny.
Okay. I'm going to put these two together because they're both really about training, about recruiting police officers. One of them is, what are the in-the-box and out-of-the-box approaches that are being used to attract more BIPOC applicants to become police officers, and any success? And this one is more about the police contract and how can the public help the police to get their contracts settled and be paid the highest salary in the metro in order to attract candidates, because right now MPD is like 20th, I think, in the state or metro areas, and get a competitive salary for bonuses and recruitment and retention. So it's sort of getting the BIPOC police officers and then just getting officers in general.
We just started a recruitment campaign for MPD. It's a media campaign. So there's Accenture is the agency that is responsible for the campaign right now. So they're hitting social media, they'll be on billboards, things like that. Monday, I meet with some of the sports teams to talk about how they can be helpful with recruitment. We, as the Office of Community Safety, this contract is up in August, and we will take over the campaign. So when I was talking earlier about, oh, you might hear some things about, hey, we need more communication people. MPD and recruitment is critical for us. Also fire, also 911. I mean, there's other parts of community safety as well that need to be included. That's that. So what do we do about hiring more BIPOC people? What do we do about hiring more women? It's what I do every time I see someone in community safety area of work. I run to them and say thank you. Today I was at the Twins opener. I met Inspector Adams' daughter for the first time. She works same precinct. I didn't know it was her. She's sitting at a table by herself, and I know she said, who is this man at a baseball game with a three-piece suit on approaching me, and I have a gun? I stopped, and I do this with a lot of officers and firefighters and things like that. Our best recruiters are our employees. If they don't feel like they're wanted or feel like a place where they want to come to work, that's a problem for us. That means that when someone asks them, hey, it's an application open for fire, there's an application open for 911, there's an application open for MPD, and they're asking me and I'm not happy about where I work, and I respond to them like, you don't want to come work here. That's not good. So the recruitment campaign for me is also trying to get us in a better place with our employees. And then specifically some of the things that have been done. MPD has gone out to a lot of the community colleges. You probably saw in the news maybe 6 months or more ago, they were at historically black colleges in Alabama. Fire has just had 3 informational sessions, And at those sessions, we really try to target the women that are there, because we used to be pretty close to number one with number of women in our fire department. And that number is probably half of what it used to be. So those are areas in which we need to do better.
What about the contract and salary and retention bonuses?
Okay, so the contract itself, this is timely. What can I actually say? As a city, the negotiators for the city are aware of what Chief O'Hara's priorities are. They are aware of what my priorities are. They'll have a meeting, I think April 12th, again with the mediator. I don't know what's going to happen with the bargaining for incentives, but my message has been that we need a competitive wage, period. They asked me what my number one priority is MPD have a competitive wage. That's my number one priority when it comes to the contract. So the Federation and the city, so city labor relations, city attorney's office, they're working together. I met with the Federation yesterday for the first time to kind of talk with them about what are some of the things that they would like to see. And again, it's salary. But we also need to get some other things done as well. And I know people say, oh, we got to have police reform also with these labor negotiations. That's not necessarily the place that we're going to get reform, right? I mean, people say that, but this is a negotiation for a contract. There's some things that we can get from the negotiation that maybe might have been given away previously, so we can try to get some of those things back. But some of the big issues, like off-duty time, I don't want that to be in a negotiation. And the reason why is I think the DOJ is going to say something about it. I don't want to go back to have to renegotiate that. So when you think of big items, if they're in this contract and the DOJ has something different, we gotta go back to renegotiate those things. So when I was saying, hey, asking the DOJ about, hey, when do you think we'll have a consent decree, and them being nice, saying, you'll get it when you get it. It would be good if we had it already, because it would help us with the negotiation and know what areas to just completely stay out of. But I don't have any idea where we are with really, I can't tell you that, hey, in 6 months this contract is going to happen. Both sides are meeting again. I think we have 2 meetings next weekend with the mediator again. So hopefully we'll get closer.
Okay, this is a very specific question about the corner where this church is, 19th and Nicollet. It said it became an open-air drive-through drug bazaar where there have been multiple shootings, 2 this past week. What can be done?
I want to so give this to Nelson Brown. I want to so give this one to her. It's like, go ahead, jump in, answer that question. Please do.
I defer to my boss.
I told her that I was going to stand up and say I yield my time to Director Nelson Brown. Seriously, here's the issue. And it's unfortunate that we're here, but this is just the reality. The reality is we don't have enough police officers. That's just the reality. And so I'm not looking at my phone for time. I'm just getting rid of that phone call. It's my daughter. I'll tell you about that later after this is over, because this is all being videotaped. So in this job, what I've done is I've listened to the police radio for all the precincts. I've gone on a couple of ride-alongs. We can't sustain what we're doing. We can't do it. The two examples I'll give you are to understand this is that on my ride-along and also listening to the radio, you will hear an officer, a call will go out, and they prioritize the call. So just think priority 1, 2, 3, right? An officer will be at a call, and they're at the end. Another call that's a low priority, let's just make it a 3, will go out. Constantly hear the officers say, copy, soon as I'm done here, I'll go to the next one, right? So what happens is, all of a sudden, they're done with this person or people. They might head to priority 3 call, but a priority 1 call goes out. So they got to go to priority 1. 4 hours later, they go to their priority 3 call. That's not good. It ain't good for the officer. It's not good for the person, right? So not only do I have an officer who doesn't have enough time for this one, they don't have enough time when they get to that priority 3 call. We're not building good relationships with the community. So how does that get us to this corner? We can't be everywhere. If you have officers and you have a presence, people have to find other places to commit crime. We don't have a presence. And the issue is that we're going call to call to call. And that's, even though we've taken some of the work off of the officers with BCR, the behavioral crisis team that goes out for the mental health calls, we've taken some of the load off of them by having embedded social workers in the precincts. We've taken the load off of them by having people complete police reports online, which I don't particularly like, but that's where we are. I would like to have a body talk to someone and do the report, but we can't do it for all of them. So that's the reason why we can't do the work here in other places. We just can't be visible.
Okay, we're getting into our last couple of questions here because we're going to have to wrap up. I wanted to just give you a chance to talk about the other departments. If you would talk about 911 and the embedding of social workers and how that's progressing.
You want me to do now?
Well, whoever that goes to, or the social work, social work embedding, is that part of neighborhood safety or 911? So whoever you think could answer that.
Definitely embedded social workers is something that we're looking at beefing up, actually. Behavioral crisis response has been a good teacher for us. They are trained mental health professionals responding. And it's a good model for us to follow, right? So it's definitely something that we're looking at beefing up in neighborhood safety. 911 as well. So behavioral crisis response is actually dispersed through 911. So when you make that call, 911 workers are trained. Is this a mental health crisis? And if so, they no longer deploy police. They deploy BCR professionals. So that's definitely something that we are looking at expanding as we move forward. And I know that Hennepin County also does this, and their data is looking well as well. There are multiple areas that we could consider this, right? And as we move forward, this is definitely an area that we think that might be successful, that we definitely want to pilot. So right now, as far as neighborhood safeties programs, it's pretty much BCR. But I expect that that's going to expand and grow as we move forward.
Okay. So sort of a quick one here. If you could change one policy, state, local, other, to improve community safety, what would you change?
That's all you.
Both of you, each of you. No, if each of you could change one policy, what policy would you change?
tough question.
Requirements to be a police officer in the state of Minnesota.
Oh, that's a good one.
I'm thinking.
The reason why I said that, why Director Nelson Brown is, so right now, for instance, the Chief O'Hara and I sent a letter to the Post Board, Licensing Board for officers for the state of Minnesota. If I have a 4-year degree and I want to, this is my second career, if I want to be a police officer, I got to go back to school to get that certificate. So there's certain things about being a police officer, not lowering a standard, but expanding how we can get more people and making it just common sense. Okay, so you did 4 years, can we get that work done in the academy? So just little things I think that we could change.
Mm-hmm. I think it's the same with 911 workers as well. There are so many people who apply who don't make it in. And some of our screening processes, I think, could be shifted a little bit. And so along with the requirements for police officers, I think I would also like to look at the requirements for 911 call takers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And last question, which is a perfect question from this group. What can we, as interested citizens, do to support your work?
You want me to start with it?
Yeah, you go first this time.
I'll go first this time. For neighborhood safety and for me personally, the biggest thing that you can do right now is give grace and maintain dignity of our department and of each other. This work is tough, right? People ask all the time, how are you going to end violence in Minneapolis? If I knew that, I wouldn't be working in Minneapolis, right? I would be on an island somewhere. This is a marathon and not a sprint. As we build infrastructure in our department and we prepare to take on this task, know that we haven't forgotten you. We are not resting on our laurels. We are taking into consideration every comment, every thought, every idea, and we are dreaming. But we are only a few people right now. So the best thing you can do is help share that message that this is a marathon, not a sprint, and neighborhood safety is not going away. We are on the cutting edge. We're still under a microscope, and we are being very intentional on building that infrastructure and how we move forward. Because the last thing we want to do is rush to throw something out there and then it collapses. Part of my personal mantra is maintaining the dignity of all people. I can't sit here and say that and then not be intentional on how we roll this department out. So the biggest way you can help me is to help me share that message, that this is a marathon, not a sprint, and we want to do this right by maintaining each other's dignity and building coalition. Thank you.
I think there's two things you can do. One, when you see first responders or people in public service, thank them. Just say thank you. The people we have here want to be here. They want to do a good job. They have the opportunity to go to other places, so please thank them. The second thing is what I've harped on earlier. There are organized groups at City Council. They're there all the time. It's the same people there all the time. The frustrating thing for me is not the council. Frustrating thing for me is all the good people that stay home that don't come to the city council meetings. They don't see you. They don't hear your voice. They hear the same folks over and over again. When the DOJ was going around, they had 5 or 6 meetings. I was at 4 of them. I didn't care where the meetings were around Minneapolis, the same people were there. They got to hear everyone's voice. I don't care what, you could be totally against something that I have or something that I want, but they got to hear all of those voices. They're hearing the same ones over and over. So whatever you can do as far as being present, writing letters, emails, whatever on your perspective, please do it.
Thank you both very, very much.
Thank you.
So as we close, I want to thank Plymouth Church for the terrific space, the terrific technical team here. And Lisa opened by stating that the League of Women Voters' commitment to nonpartisan voter education, which I hope you guys got tonight. I think we got a lot of that. And Plymouth Communities safety team is a guiding principle, which is we are watching, we expect results, and we're not going away. And as we look forward to the work that needs to happen, we hope that you feel educated and empowered to engage. Our community is going to get the public safety that we expect by partnering with inspiring leaders like these guys to help define what that community safety is. So as you leave, I want you guys to please take one of the public safety, our public safety group just developed a 2024 public safety update, and it summarizes really what has happened in the last 4 years. It's a 10-minute read that summarizes the last 4 years of what's happened in public safety in Minneapolis, and also looks forward to say, what do you need to look for and what questions do we need to ask over the work that is continuing. So, and lastly, another huge thanks to Commissioner Barnette and Director Nelson Brown for spending their Thursday evening with us.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You were just awesome.